r/AskReddit by Redical. Historians of Reddit. What is the biggest ducky moment in history? A pirate known as Jean Lafitte had a bounty of $500 put on him by governor, so he put a $5,000 bounty on the governor. No you. I'm a French quarter tour guide. I tell this story every day. When Otto von Bismarck was about 50, he was walking down a street when a man ran up to him and shot him 5 times. Otto then turned around and began to beat the absolute shit out of him until some armed guards come to help him. When they inspected Otto for wounds, they found that all 5 hit, but they all either just grazed him or bounced off his ribs. Literally the Iron Chancellor. German quality. Napoleon invited his brother-in-law to speak with him before his coronation as emperor to remind the brother-in-law that he objected to Napoleon marrying Josephine because Napoleon would amount to nothing. Now this is the kind of petty duck I can get behind. In AD 37 the new Roman Emperor Gaius, better known by the nickname Caligula, built a bridge across the sea. It stretched 3 miles across the deep blue waters of the Bay of Naples at ancient Rome's most fashionable seaside resort of Baiae. But Caligula's was no ordinary bridge. It was a temporary, floating structure built on wooden pontoons, a costly and impressive featuring of engineering. It served a single purpose before being dismantled. On a day of boiling heat watched by crowds of spectators, Caligula rode across the bridge. His armor glinted in the sunlight, for the 24-year-old emperor had dressed himself in the golden breastplate of the legendary Greek hero Alexander the Great. On the following day Caligula made the journey in reverse, this time riding in a chariot, followed by soldiers of his personal guard. It was a pointless piece of showmanship, lost on the majority of the crowd, several of whom fell drunkenly to their deaths in the sea after 2 days partying. One historian claimed Caligula pulled the stunt to disprove a prophecy that he had no more chance of becoming emperor than of riding a horse across the Bay of Baiae. Threatening to make his horse a consul was also in the same vein. It wasn't a serious consideration born out of madness but rather an insult to the Senate. Either my horse can do a better job than any of you or I can make my horse consul and you can't do anything about it. So when France exiles Napoleon Bonaparte, the first time, they didn't think to change out military personnel, so he basically rolls up to the first French outpost he gets to, says sup and begins reassembling an army. By the time he gets to Paris, he's got enough forces that France is like, well, welcome back. The French newspapers, which, in 1815, were subject to the censor, announced the departure of Bonaparte from Elba, his progress through France, and his entry into Paris in the following ingenious manner. The 9th of March, the Anthropophagus has quitted his den. 10th, the Corsican ogre has landed at Cape One. 11th, the tiger has arrived at Gap. 12th, the monster slept at Grenoble. 13th, the tyrant has passed through Lyons. 14th, the usurper is directing his steps towards Dijon, but the brave and loyal Burgundians have risen en masse and surrounded him on all sides. 18th, Bonaparte is only 60 leagues from the capital. He has been fortunate enough to escape the hands of his pursuers. 19th, Bonaparte is advancing with rapid steps, but he will never enter Paris. 20th, Napoleon will, tomorrow, be under our ramparts. 21st, the emperor is at Fontainebleau. 22nd, his imperial and royal majesty, yesterday evening, arrived at the Tuileries, amidst the joyful acclamations of his devoted and faithful subjects. That is amazing. I will admit that my French history is just awful, but I was curious, how do the French treat the history of Napoleon? Is it like how the Russians treat Stalin and Lenin? How Americans treat someone like Washington or say Teddy Roosevelt? Or is it somewhere in between? In the 1970s the small town of Vulcan, West Virginia asked for state funding to replace a bridge into town. The state legislature refused to grant Vulcan the funding they needed. Instead the town appealed to the Soviet Union for aid. After hearing about the request, the state legislature immediately granted over $1 million for the town to build a new bridge. If a small town in WV asking for Soviet funding in the middle of the Cold War isn't a big middle finger to the state government, then I don't know what is. The funny part is that 2 Soviet representatives at the US Embassy actually came over to look at the broken bridge and seriously considered funding the rebuilding to piss off the Americans. Imagine the propaganda the Soviets could have pushed from that. British prisoner of war in Nazi Germany stitches a quilt. The Nazis put it out for show. Hidden in Morse code stitched in were the words "Duck Hitler" and "God Save the Queen." Telegraph Co. UK link. Edit "God Save the King." I think I just had the Queen song stuck in my head. This requires some background. The Spartans were famously blunt. They were trained to get to the point when speaking, instead of using artsy and beautiful language that would have been common at the time, by being bitten on the thumb if they became long-winded. Now to the meat. Philip II of Macedon, Alexander the Great's father, sent the Spartans a letter saying, "Would you like me to enter your land as friend or foe?" The Spartans responded with one word: neither. Philip was irate. He then sent another long-winded message: "If once I enter into your territories, I will destroy ye all, never to rise again." The Spartans then sent back one word: "If." It was like putting your head in a lion's mouth, and I love it. Edit. I was typing in a car. Excuse the typos. That's where the meaning of laconic comes from. Exactly. Laconia is pretty much another name for Sparta, and the people were called Lacedaemons. I would say the moment that Rollo swore allegiance to the French king, the bishop's present suggested that Rollo kiss the king's foot as a sign of submission. It was probably an idea intended to humiliate Rollo, and was not taken very well. After some discussion, it was agreed that one of Rollo's men would do it. However, the person chosen lifted the king's foot and, without bending down, brought it up to his mouth. Not surprisingly, the king fell over, amid general laughter in the court. Following this amusing scene, the king and his men swore to honor the concession to Rollo. Durham World Heritages at .com link. That's ballsy. This is already one of my favorite threads in Reddit history. Galvarino, Chilean warrior who had both his hands cut off by the conquistadors for raising arms against the Spanish. Instead of letting himself serve as a message of helplessness in the face of the invaders, the crazy bastard strapped swords to his stumps and went on the warpath. So this guy was ancient Chilean Wolverine? May I add that when he got defeated again, the Spanish were impressed and offered him to surrender. But he spit in the commander's face, so they literally fed him to their dogs. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Edit. Damn guys, thanks so much. Literally made my karma score 9 times as big. After the restoration, the English dug up the body of Oliver Cromwell and hung, drawn and quartered the body, sticking the head on London Bridge. The Stuarts had form with this. Mary, Queen of Scots, had dead traitors embalmed so that their dead bodies could stand trial and then be drawn and quartered in public. On the crowning of King Henry VI, he backdated his own reign to before the date of the Battle of Bosworth, meaning anyone who was loyal to him now but had shown any sign of opposition at Bosworth was now a traitor and an enemy to the realm. Justice served. Duck. That sounds like the premise behind the Blackadder. This is more petty, but when Taft bragged to his friends via telegram about scaling a mountain on horseback, that it was a few thousand feet, clear weather, all in all not too difficult, his friend replied, "How is horse?" Taft was a chunky boy. Didn't he get stuck in his bathtub? Edit. A myth, apparently, but the man was certainly no stranger to a good meal. The first cell phone. The first call ever made from a cell phone was to a competitor's landline. Big dong energy. When Germanic tribes invaded Britain after the Romans left, they named the native Celts Welsk, meaning foreigner, even though they themselves were the foreigners. That later became the word Welsh, which the English promptly adopted for phrases like Welch on a bet, TL, DR. All of history has been one giant etymological middle finger to the Welsh. Yeah, but the Welsh language is itself a middle finger to English speakers. More like the English orthography used for Welsh is a middle finger to the Welsh people. The Irish language as written has similar issues as well. A bunch of phonemes and sounds that don't exist in English are instead written using weird letter combos and really subtle grammar tricks. I sometimes think it was a deliberate tactic to make sure nobody could bloody read either Welsh or Irish. I love that line. Or as much as he needs. Being taller than other men. It's one of those butterfly moments of history where if the timing on things is slightly different or the English face the invaders in the other order, William the Bastard is a footnote of history and we'd all be commenting in a language stuffed full of Norwegian words instead of French ones. The reply of the Zaporozhian Cossacks is the best response to a demand for surrender ever. In response to requests by the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire to desist attacks and submit, Zaporozhian Cossacks to the Turkish Sultan. O Sultan, Turkish devil and damned devil's kith and kin, secretary to Lucifer himself, what the devil kind of knight are thou, that canst not slay a hedgehog with your naked ass? The devil shits, and your army eats, thou shalt not, thou son of a horse, make subjects of Christian sons, we have no fear of your army, by land and by sea we will battle with thee, duck thy mother, thou Babylonian scullion, Macedonian wheelwright, brewer of Jerusalem, goat ducker of Alexandria, swineherd of Greater and Lesser Egypt, pig of Armenia, Podolian thief, catamite of Tartary, hangman of Kamiamets, and full of all the world and underworld, an idiot before God, grandson of the serpent, and the crick in our dong, pig's snout, mare's ass, slaughterhouse cur, unchristened brow, screw thine own mother, so the Zaporozhians declare. You lowlife, you won't even be herding pigs for the Christians. Now we'll conclude. For we don't know the date and don't own a calendar. The moon's in the sky, the year with the Lord. The day's the same over here as it is over there. For this kiss our ass. Kashovai Ottoman Ivan Serko. With the whole Zaporozhian host. Edit. 7 years and my first gold. Neat. There's a painting of this moment with all the Cossacks laughing as they compose the letter. I'll never get tired of that painting. You can hear them just looking at it. Also, Ilya Repin's an amazing painter in general, and the rest of his stuff's always worth a look. This was played in besieged Leningrad, and it was broadcasted on radio, so Nazi soldiers could hear it. Imagine hearing Duck from a city that you thought was already dead. Here's the symphony if you want to hear it. Yauta link. More weight. Corey was so swept up by the trials that he initially believed the accusations against his wife, until he himself was arrested based on the same charge. Fassapun. I didn't think the leopard would eat my face, says supporter of leopard eating face party. Thanks for watching this radical video. Subscribe for the best Reddit videos straight to your feed 3 times a day.